Director for Audubon Great Lakes. It's been just about a year, I think, that I started that role, but I've played a lot of different parts in Audubon. And Bill was right. I think when I started 14 years ago, it was the grassroots coordinator through our Ohio office, and that was mostly focused on Great Lakes restoration. Started to do a little bit of climate work, but after that I started doing, when our state office closed, I was working directly with our national policy office, and eventually was doing work in multiple states as part of sort of our, the campaign manager for our climate team through National Audubon. So for the couple of years before I kind of came back to focus in the Great Lakes, I was helping some of our other state offices plan and implement some state policy work around climate and energy stuff. So I'm really thrilled to sort of be back in this region full time. It's, you know, obviously I'm biased, but it's the most important part of the country. And, you know, politically speaking, it's just a very, very important place for us to be doing the work that we're doing. And also just, you know, it's one of the most biologically diverse parts of the country. From the Great Lakes, you know, down to the Mississippi River watershed, Ohio is a really, really key place for conservation and birds. So anyway, I'm so thrilled to be back. So thanks, Bill, for talking a little bit more about Audubon Great Lakes and our structure. Over the last 5 years, the Chicago office has become the Audubon Great Lakes office, and we do cover 5 states. Ohio is one of the 5 states that I work in. I also do work in Minnesota. It's sort of my bonus state right now while they're building up their state office again. But, you know, my heart is in Ohio. I live in Cleveland, so I'm here. And I'm always excited to reconnect with the chapters. You are all on the ground doing stuff, you know, great work every day. So thanks for all the time and effort that goes into that. So today I'm just going to do a sort of a high-level view of our policy priorities. I'm going to talk a bit about some of our federal priorities because those are important in Ohio. We have important decision makers on some of those, and then finish off with some of our state priorities. We're still, you know, limited in policy capacity, but we are very much engaged in some water issues and some energy issues here. My hope is that over the next year or so, we'll be able to grant a little bit more and build out our capacity, but you know, these are issues that are really important for us, and so we just, you know, the work that the chapters are doing on policy makes or breaks how effective we can be. So we're just starting to build that back up, and I'll show you a few examples in other states too of how we're doing that work. But just so you know, Audubon in general, these are how we sort of organize our policy priorities. We, first off, are always working to protect bedrock laws, things like the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the Endangered Species Act. These are things we want to make sure stay intact and get strengthened, not weakened. So that's one sort of category of places that we focus. The other one is climate, right? In 2014, we came out with our Birds and Climate Report that found that half of species in North America are at risk due to climate change. So that really shifted the whole organization's focus on finding policy solutions that make sense for Audubon to advocate for on behalf of birds. So we do a lot of work across the country on advocating for renewable energy and energy efficiency, things like that, that reduce carbon emissions. Coasts, you know, I always like to remind our folks in the DC office that, you know, we have a lot of coastline in the Great Lakes. I think other than Alaska, Michigan is the state with the longest coastline, right? So the Great Lakes have a lot of coasts that are really important for birds, and that also feeds into our water strategy, which is another category that is around protecting and preserving habitat and water quality to make sure birds are protected in that way. So our Great Lakes work does fall into, a lot of our Great Lakes restoration work falls into this category. And then working lands, we do a lot with, you know, not so much in Ohio yet, but we do a lot with bird-friendly agriculture, ranching, and forestry, how energy is being developed and how that impacts the land. Where it comes into Ohio right now, federally speaking, we do a lot of work on the Farm Bill. There's a lot of conservation programs that are in the Farm Bill, and so we just passed a Farm Bill this last year. So we won't have to do that for a little while longer, but we are working to make sure that the conservation programs that we supported are going to be implemented in a way that makes sense. So we have someone in our DC policy office that's an expert on the Farm Bill that we work with. So again, it's not we used to have Senator Brown that was engaged there. Now Senator Stabenow is a key person. She's not from Ohio, but in our region. So we have a lot of folks that are on that committee that are important, that we're able to really have an impact and make sure that there's good conservation programming in the Farm Bill. That would be in our Working Lands program. So going to, one example that I mentioned of the bedrock laws is the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and everyone, I'm sure, heard that 2018 was the year of the bird. It was the 100th anniversary of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Excuse me. We were able, this has been a law that has come under attack by some in Congress and by the administration. So this is really what protects birds from some of the more industrial things that are happening on our landscape, from things like oil pits for energy development and high tension wires, things like that. Right now, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act makes sure that that companies have to pay for any damage that happens to birds from these practices. So it's an incentive to make sure that they're as safe as possible. We've worked with industry to come up with safe practices. There's a lot of common sense, easy things that have come from that discussion. And the reason we're able to bring them to the table on this is because of the MBTA. So things like, the BP oil spill, the damage to birds they were made to pay for that because of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So if the rollback of this law that the administration has proposed goes into effect, the next BP oil spill, whatever that might be, will not have to, that they won't be on the hook for that. So it's really, really important. It's one of the bedrock laws that Audubon helped get passed, and that we want to make sure stays intact. So we have filed a lawsuit, federal lawsuit last year that we're a part of. And then we've also gone to the states, and many chapters in Ohio worked on this, or across the region. I think we had 24 across the Great Lakes region. I think Miami Valley, right? Shout out to all of you. Got a state local resolution passed that declares 2018 Year of the Bird and talks about the importance of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. We have chapters doing that all across the country. We have also got a state proclamation here in Ohio where the governor declared it Year of the Bird in 2018 and talked about the importance of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So the purpose of that was really to show that there's local support for this. And looking into the state legislature, we think our state rules here lend themselves well to saying that even if we do roll back the federal rules, the state has the authority to enforce it. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, potentially working with the state legislature to more clearly define it. And the thought is if we have state legislatures across the country doing that, it's going to roll up and make it more difficult for the federal government to roll back. So MBTA is something that's going to stay on our radar. You'll probably be hearing more about it. There's going to be opportunity to get comments in on rules. We're working in the House to hopefully get a proactive bill pushed forward. There was a bill that was pushed last year that was introduced that we're able to defeat that would have legislated this rollback. So we're hoping to get more proactive legislation this year, at least in the House, saying that, this is an important bill. And I'm spent a little bit longer on here than I wanted, but the MBTA is a really important thing, and we're going to continue to be working on that. I'm excited of the potential to maybe do something with state decision makers about this, so we'll keep you looped in as that develops. This is something that just popped up, just got introduced a couple of weeks ago, the Better Energy Storage Technology Act, the BEST Act. Kind of a wonky bill dealing with improving energy storage technology to help renewable energy be more viable. In the House Science Committee right now, and we do have 2 members on the committee, the Congressional Committee. Anthony Gonzalez, who's the original co-sponsor of the bill, is on the committee, and then Representative Wenstrup from the Columbus area, gerrymandered district, but is also on that committee. So he's going to be someone that we're going to want to encourage to become a co-sponsor of this act. It just came out. There is companion legislation being talked about in the Senate as well. but I just bring this up because we do have 2 members on the committee that we're going to be, we put out a press release thanking Congressman Gonzalez for being a part of this. It's a bipartisan bill. Both Democrats and Republicans have co-sponsored it, so we're hopeful that this is something that we can push forward to get people working on it and dealing on climate change. So stay tuned for more information on that. The Great Lakes Restoration Plan, this is a lot, really big focus for us with our water initiatives. We do have a policy expert in DC that is just focused on water that we work with closely. So she does, work on our Everglades project, on our Western Waters project. So we have someone to work with us to map out our Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. So the Great Lakes Restoration Plan is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is a federal program that funds restoration across the Great Lakes region, restoration and protection. So it cleans up areas of concern, it protects habitat, it tries to stop invasive species, it deals with water quality and making sure that the quality of the water is taken into account, it's dealing with harmful algal blooms, all the major issues that the Great Lakes face. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is a federal funded program that we're working to continue to get funding for. I'm going to talk about this more in a second, but generally speaking, the fight has been to maintain that it gets fully funded year to year. So over the last 5 years, it's been funded at around $300 million a year, but the last 3 years, there's been an attempt to roll it back by the administration in their budget. So the first year, they, I think, zeroed it out. Congress brought it back. The second year, they cut it by 90%. Congress brought it back. And then this year, there was another suggestion in the president's budget to cut it by 90%. But again, there was so much bipartisan support that Congress stepped up, said we're going to, we want this to be fully funded. The president actually amended his budget and resubmitted a budget that fully funds it. So it just passed through the House at $320 million, which is $20 million than people are even advocating for. And so we'll see what happens in the Senate. But we have pretty strong, we're pretty sure that this is going to be a program that's going to continue to be fully funded. It's very, very popular on both sides of the aisle. This is we're also working on sustainable forage fish legislation. A lot of the birds that come through the Great Lakes depend on ocean fish to sustain themselves, and so currently forage fish are not an active part of the sustainable fisheries management plan for the United States because they're not something that the fishing industry is necessarily fishing for, but they're really important to sustain all the other fish and birds, obviously. So we're working, and I bring this up because the Great Lakes is an important part of this, even though we're not ocean states. The Representative Debbie Dingell out of Michigan is the champion on this. She was the lead co-sponsor on this, and it got introduced last month. And the reason that she is the champion on this is because we have been talking to her. We've been talking to her from our DC office, and we've been talking to her in her district about this because fishery management is an issue for her district. There's some recreational fishing interests that have been putting some pressure on her. Luckily, they are on board with the forage fish bill, but she really stepped up and saw this as a chance for her to lead on legislation. So, and a lot of that has to do with the work that we've been doing with her, with our chapters in the district. So this is a federal bill that Audubon is helping to lead on because of the grassroots work that we've been doing in the district with chapters. So we've had letters written, we've had district meetings. I'll talk more about this in a second too, but this is I bring this up because we're hoping, to get it out of committee and we'll get it and to get this passed. So keep that on your radar. It's a good example of Audubon leading. And so this is the same bill, forage fish legislation. It's called the Save the Seabirds campaign. You may have seen that. Again, Representative Debbie Dingell is one of the leaders. She's out of Michigan. We're also doing a lot of work in Wisconsin because this is Senator Baldwin. We want to get legislation introduced in the Senate. So this is Tammy Baldwin meeting with chapter leaders that went to DC. and met with members. And so we actually have a student chapter in Green Bay, so a number of them went and met with the senator. We had chapter leaders publish an op-ed, opinion editorial in their paper. When Representative Jingle issued a press release, she had a picture of Audubon and all the people that went to DC to talk to her, to talk to members of Congress. And we had, I think, 7 people go to this fly-in, which is what we're calling, which is an opportunity to go to DC and talk to your members of Congress about certain policy issues. So it's something we do on multiple issues. We've done 3 in the last, first part of this year and last part of last year. So it's something that does come up, and if it's something that you're interested in doing, as it's depending on the issue and the districts and things like that, but it's a great opportunity to go and talk to people in DC about Audubon priorities. We're also setting up district meetings with members, so it's another great way to talk to people in the district, in their district offices, so let them know about your chapter and talk about, again, some federal priorities and let them know it's important. So you don't have to go to DC to meet with your member. If you're interested in setting up a district meeting, let me know and we can work with you on that. Glen Water Conservation Fund is something we finally got it reauthorized. It's one of the most successful conservation funding programs in the country. It gets money from oil leasing, offshore oil leasing, and mitigates impacts from that industry. Every single county in the country has a place that is helped to be protected by the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So this is a big success story. This is something that people flew in. We did apply into DC. This was a woman from our Illinois chapter, Megan, and I'm blanking on her last name. I apologize, but she was a great chapter leader that came in from Peoria because her member of Congress was on the priority list, and so she was able to go in and talk about how important this program is for protecting places that are important to birds. We got it reauthorized, and we're going to make sure that we continue to work to get full funding for that every year. And the goal is to get it permanently funded fully, but we're not there yet. But we do have it reauthorized for the next 5 years, which is great. These are the states that we work in. So Ohio and green, but the Audubon Great Lakes, we also work in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. And so some of the priorities here in Ohio, as I mentioned, are supporting full funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative at the state level. We're also working on funding at the federal level, and we're also working at state level funding for Great Lakes restoration. I mentioned protecting the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, comprehensive renewable energy policy. I'm going to talk about that more in a second. And then we're always looking to make sure to maintain state funding for conservation, for the Department of the Interior and things like that through the budgeting process. So a little bit more about our water priorities. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, as I mentioned, just got out of the House appropriations process, or now goes to the Senate. So fully funding the GLRI is a major priority that we think we're going to be successful at. And now that the president says that he supports it, it's a great opportunity for us to go and say, hey, how about some more money? So I think the next step on that is as part of the coalition that we're on, and on behalf of Audubon, we'll be asking folks to ask for more funding, a higher funding level than the $300 million. So that's the next step, is to get more money that we can use for on-the-ground conservation. We use a lot of that money for coastal wetland restoration. So it's a direct opportunity to protect birds and their habitat. At the state level, there is a fund that Governor DeWine has suggested called the H2 Ohio Fund. He wants to get $900 million over 10 years to invest in clean water and Lake Erie restoration. So $900 million, that's across the whole state, but half of that would have to be spent in the basin. So that's going through the state budget process right now. So we'll keep you in the loop on what actually happens there. But again, this is another opportunity to create funds that we can use for some more on-the-ground conservation work. A lot of this, I think, is going to be going to coastal wetlands, because wetlands are a great filter for water, they're a great habitat, they're a great flood control, and wetlands are pretty great across the board as far as health of the Great Lakes. So we're trying to make sure that money is steered in a way that's going to benefit birds. So this is the coalition. This is us at the coalition conference called Healing Our Waters. This is a few of Audubon Great Lakes staff. Matt Miller is there all the way on the left. He's our conservation director and also our acting director. So they're at the Great Lakes office right now while we're doing the search. And so it's you know, I just wanted to highlight this because this is a conference in Detroit, but every year it travels around. Over 150 organizations are part of the Healing Our Waters conference, our coalition, and so we work across the region on Great Lakes restoration. So it's an opportunity to really look at the problems at scale across the region and see how we can engage. So we're just starting to really get people engaged in all the states that we work on. So every year they have a fly-in in DC, so that we were able for the first time to get someone from all of our states, at least to DC, to talk about the Great Lakes. We had 6 states there, so that was great, including Minnesota. So we went to DC in March and advocated for the full funding of the GLRI. And you may have heard last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was now, May 21st, we had a webinar because not only do we need to get the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funded, but every 5 years they do an action plan to determine how to prioritize that funding and how to spend it. So this was an opportunity for us to raise our voices across the region for birds, to make sure birds were really taken into account into the action plan for the GLRI. So we did a webinar. It is available online if you're interested. We outline the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and then that also outlines our conservation priorities, our wetland conservation priorities. So here, if you want to get deeper into that, that's something that Isabella can send out to you. But we're able to get, I think, almost 100 people on the phone to hear about the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Action Plan, and we walked people through what we wanted them to comment on. So it's a great plan so far. It highlights wetland conservation, restoration, which is something that we were working on. It talks about you know, the story of the piping plover, which is a great success story of the GLRI. They're now nesting in every stage on every Great Lake for the first time. You know, I think they're up to like 76 or 77 pairs after starting at 17, and that's because they were prioritized in the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Action Plan, right? They were focused on, in a short amount, like within 3 to 5 years, their numbers went up, and it was, you know, it's a way to, again, at scale, make a difference for birds. So what we wanted to do was really look at that for marsh birds. They're in great decline across the region, and that's something that we've been monitoring and building wetland, our coastal wetland work as built around marsh bird habitat, because if you build it for marsh birds, it's good for everything else. So that's really what we were focusing on, getting people to sort of give a voice that we need marsh birds to be a part of the prioritization in the action plan. And we were able to get a number of chapters to go online. It was a difficult process. You know, it wasn't like just send an email. It was boxes that people needed to fill in, and people really stepped up and did that. And we just got word from EPA last week that we do think marsh birds is going to make it into the plan, and that's a direct result of the work that we did. So again, that's a direct result of chapters taking action to make sure that birds have a voice. So it's not official yet, but that's the word on the street, because I'm really excited about that and can't wait to officially let everyone know about the good work that went into that. Another priority with Ohio, obviously, is our climate and energy work. So we are continuing to engage and inform the LICO offshore wind projects that just hit another stage. Are going to be coming up with another exciting hearing soon. We conditionally supported the project because they put a lot of conditions that we asked for. The staff recommended those conditions, so now we have to see what the stipulations are actually going to enforce are, and those just came out, and I have an email from Gary George, our renewable energy director, that came in over the weekend with his his input on that, so stay tuned. Something on that will be coming out soon, probably next week, about the next stage of the Lake Erie Energy Development Corporation offshore wind project that's off the coast of Cleveland. So the 6 turbine project, it's the first time ever in freshwater in North America, and so we think it's an important project to get right. So it's a constant. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray areas, and there's a lot of new technology and a lot of unknowns. So we really have been encouraging them to take their time and get it right. So stay tuned on that. Feel free to drop me an email if you want any more information in the meantime, but we will be communicating more about that. Again, supporting the BEST Act that I just mentioned is something that we're going to be working on at the federal level, but most of our energy has really been focused on stopping House Bill 6. And so it really is a bill that's been driven by First Energy because they have 2 aging nuclear power plants that are slated to be decommissioned next year. And so they are looking to get money to help keep them from closing. And so the biggest problem with the bill, however, is that it completely dismantles our state renewable portfolio standard that was passed unanimously in 2008. It has been, you know, the direct result has been over 100,000 direct renewable energy jobs in the state, but also, you know, it's getting us, it's making us move forward into a clean energy future, which is going to be crucial to address climate change. It's crucial for birds. So this bill kind of popped up. It just went from bad to worse, and it unfortunately did pass the House late last week. Unfortunately, we did write testimony, as Bill mentioned. He did go down to the State House to represent Audubon. We did have an action alert. I think we're almost up to 600 folks have taken action on that. We did get some targeted calls, and I turned our testimony into an op-ed that Bill submitted to the dispatch that has not run yet. But we're always looking for folks that want to write a letter to the editor. We got a letter to the editor in a Republican district up here right after the committee passed it out before the House passed it. And it got shared over 500 times from the Cleveland.com website, which is unheard of. And the person that submitted it got a direct call from the member, David Greenspan, and he voted no on the bill. So letters to the editor can really get the attention of people in their district. People in the district can really get the attention of their member by writing letters to the editor, and that's something that we can help with if you're interested in doing that. So we expect it to start to get sponsored testimony next week in the Senate. And it's a little bit unclear what's going to happen, frankly. We're not sure. So I think the First Energy is probably going to get their money. Whether or not they're going to dismantle the RPS at the same time, they could just stick that bailout in the budget and be done with it. But we'll see. They could just pick it up as is and push it through. So we'll know more after the hearings next week. But stay tuned. We probably will have another email action alert out to target the Senate and the governor. And as Bill mentioned, he passed out the sign-on letter. There's Bill, that's him at the hearing. So there is a sign-on letter that was passed around. We'll send this out electronically too. But I'd like to get a good amount of folks signed on to this by the end of next week, because this is going to have to move fast. They have to have this done by the end of June. So we're going to be moving quickly on it. So things that you can do is to sign the chapter letter. We just need your name and title and the chapter name. And then we'll hand deliver that to members in the State House. And then we are going to ask folks to give their state senators a call. If you don't know who your state senator is, you can just go to ohiosenate.gov/senators, and you can look up who your senator is by zip code, and be linked directly to their page with their phone number on it. And then be prepared to respond with to the action alert that we're going to send out that's targeting the Senate and the governor. So, and again, I did mention if you want to write a letter to the editor, we can certainly help with that too. So that's what's going on with HB6. And we'll keep you looped in. Isabella has started to send out updates on what's going on there. So if you're not on her list and want to keep looped in on that, please send her a note and ask to be added. I do give policy I do give policy updates on the chapter leaders call, which are, as Bill mentioned, happen every month.
Marnie, can I jump in here for a second? This is Jackie Augustine.
Yep.
We have one more speaker, and we have about 10 minutes left for this session, so I just wanted to check in to see if you could start wrapping it up so we can get our last speaker in.
Yeah, this is my last slide.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So things that you can do, I suggest to join the chapter leaders call that happen every month. Again, if you're interested in writing a letter to the editor, making a phone call, let us know. It's great that you do it. It's even better if you let us know that you did it, so we can start tracking that and let us know what they say. Share the action alerts with your network, right? It's helping to build our capacity out to take action. If you don't already have a policy or advocacy committee in your chapter, that's a great way to start, have someone that's designated to sort of track this stuff for you and be a contact for us. That's useful. We're doing bird walks with decision makers. We're putting together some bird walks with elected officials, starting with Congress. So if you're interested in engaging on that, let us know. As they come together, we'll let you know. So that's on my agenda for this summer, to do some more outreach to Congress to get them out birding with us. And then come to the convention. As Bill said, it's a great way to meet other folks in the network and build some skills. That Friday, we're going to have a session just on the Great Lakes Initiative. We're going to be talking about our conservation work in the Great Lakes, about our policy work in the Great Lakes, and encourage you to attend that. And I think it was Liz that asked about my kids. This has been a long time ago, holding a chickadee. Anyway, so yeah, if you have more need anything else, that's my information, and I'll just stop so we have a few minutes for questions.
Okay, we'll do questions while we switch over to the next presentation. Are there any questions?
How soon could we expect the next email about HB6?
I think probably tomorrow, Isabella will send something out with that electronic version of the chapter sign-on letter, and it's just a nudge to get that done. I think the action alert I'm looking to see, we have to negotiate with National about with the emails that they send out too, so I'm looking for a spot on the calendar next week for an email action alert. But Isabella's email will have information specifically with the chapter letter, and I think some ways that you can contact your state senator.
Good, thank you.
Great, thank you, Marnie. We have Alyssa's talk up unloaded, so if there's time at the end, you have Marnie's contact information if you have more information, and Alyssa, take it away.
Sure. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to talk really fast because I think we have 6 minutes left. So I'm here to talk about like a uber local issue, so plastic in our environment, plastic pollution. I'm sure everyone has heard the statistic. The Ohio Ocean Conservancy believes that by the year 2050, the ocean will have more weight from plastics than fish. So when you think about how light plastic is and how heavy fish are, there'll be more weight of plastic in the ocean than fish. So that is a pretty scary thing to think about. So we all know the problem. Single-use plastics, really bad. They're used for an average of 12 minutes. The main problem is the bonds in that plastic were engineered to last forever, but they're designed to be used for minutes at a time. So you really have this upside down way, that plastic was invented for. So these are all the top offenders: cigarette butts, plastic bottles, plastic. Ocean Conservancy did that. But what we know over the years is that the plastic consumption is continuing to go up. Recycling is just leveled off. US EPA estimates that 5% of our plastic bags are being recycled. So these are in the recycling containers that are in front of your grocery store. So they have been there for about 20 years now, and they're somewhere where people regularly take them. We're not asking them to go out of their way and make an extra trip. It's just not happening. It's just not being recycled. We're working with Dr. Sherry Mason. She has done studies of ocean or plastic gyres in our Great Lakes. So Lake Erie, has the highest concentration of plastic pollution. She believes it's due to the dense population. It also could be there's some other like Chicago has a plastic bag fee now, so all sorts of things could be influencing it. But we have a serious problem here in the Great Lakes, and we all know how. So this is this really wonderful chart where you can see that the plastic consumption is just going through the roof, and the recovery and recycling is just down here. It's not moving at all. So I came across this sentence in some article I was reading with scientists. He said the ocean is sending the world a message in the bottle, and we aren't listening. That message in the bottle is these sperm whales with their guts full of plastic. And I just thought that was such a great way, you know, to really, really encapsulate this problem that no one is really taking action. I should say some people are taking action. So what we have seen, the recycling at the stores aren't working. You know, Whole Foods, you know, with their wooden nickel, you bring on your own bag. That's a really great incentive, but we know that it's just not working. What we know that does work is creating a negative consequence. So we've seen cities like Boulder, Colorado, pretty environmentally conscious folks out there. They're still using plastic bags. Within 3 months, the plastic consumption at grocery stores, because they put a 10-cent fee in, reduced by like 85%. I mean, that's a dramatic amount in a really short amount of time. The San Jose, California, they put a plastic bag in. They have reported 90% of their storm drains are cleaner now with less plastic going into them. So we have seen what does work and what doesn't, and what does work is really creating a negative consequence for people who choose to use a plastic or paper bag. Right now in Ohio, we have 4 things going on. So Orange Village, which is a village up in Cleveland, they have a ban on plastic bags. This is a little bit problematic. What we've seen really works is to have a hybrid of a plastic bag and a fee on papers. So if you choose to use, you know, a bag and only the plastic bags are banned, you're just going to use the paper. So obviously we would rather see people use paper. It's biodegradable. It's made of a renewable resource. But really what we want to do is kind of decrease the amount of consumption of you know, these kind of weight things that can be easily replaced with a cotton reusable bag. Ashtabula was really interesting. It was started by a really young group of teenagers, and they passed an ordinance in the town of Ashtabula that straws will only be served by request in restaurants there. So that, I think that's pretty cool. So was it this Tuesday or this Tuesday? Both Cuyahoga County and Bexley both passed a ban on plastic bags. The Bexley is really, I feel like a little bit better language. I don't know, I know there's some folks from the Cleveland, Cuyahoga area. There's been a little bit of a saga going on with that plastic bag issue. So, but this Bexley one is written really well. It has a really long-term plan of banning plastic bags, and then you see all of these kind of other container stirs, styrofoam lids, etc. And they're really moving. This legislation is purposely written to be long-term goals with zero waste as the end goal. And about 14,000 people live in the city of Bexley. It's kind of like a suburb of Columbus, so it's not going to be a huge impact, but it'll be really interesting to watch it and to see how it goes. So those are the 4 local ordinances that we currently have in Ohio. The top 2, Orange Village and Ashtabula, were started late last year, and then these 2 are both new this year, the Cuyahoga County and Bexley. So what we have happen now is a House Bill 242. This is an ALEC preemption bill. You guys know who ALEC is, right? ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council. I think of them as a dating service for corporate interests and lobbyists. And legislators. So there's corporate interest, and they're going to churn out some legislation that the decision makers can kind of take and run with. So this bill, we fought it last year. It was under Senate Bill 210, House Bill 625. It died in committee. We're happily It's now introduced again. It was just introduced about 2 weeks ago.
This is just Ohio?
This is a House bill in Ohio. Yep, it's not federal. I'm a state chapter, so I only work on state issues. So this is a preemption bill that is trying to take away local community power, and so they want to ban cities to have the ability to address plastic waste. So it's really, even though we've seen all the science that I just gave you in a matter of 2 minutes, we know all this is going on in the world. We know how the food is entering. You know, out in the gyre, you hear these reports that there is 1 piece of plankton per 32 pieces of plastic. How ever could a fish, get some kind of food? And you can easily see how it gets into the food chain. It gets into us. We know it's a problem. Yet there's decision makers here in Ohio that are turning a blind eye. They want to maintain the status quo. They want to remove, local government. So this whole thing of preemptive acts really began in 2010, and it's really just a way, to really remove some of our local power. This particular bill. That's a good one, right? This bill, the same preemption bill, 10 other states have signed on to the same exact language. So now we have statewide language that they're trying to move uniformly across the U.S. So they're just checking off the states. Even though Ohio EPA put a mandate out to cities to divert their waste from entering the landfill, because Ohio only has currently a 40-year waste capacity. I have a 10-year-old, and 40 years does not sound like a long time.
What does you mean by that?
What's that? Divert waste.
No, the statement you just made, it has a 40-year?
So the state of Ohio has the Ohio EPA Waste Management has determined that we have 40 years left of waste capacity, like land waste capacity here in the state of Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So then you couple it with China, right, who in 2018 started taking waste from us. They had a list of certain things they won't take. Now in 2020, they're eyeing a possible full ban. I think I just heard on NPR, Malaysia started sending things back to us. So where is all this gonna go? It's a huge problem. I usually do this presentation in tandem with my colleague. So she works on dirty fuels. So looping it back around to why is it here? Well, because we have the Petro Hub coming in. You guys know about this, right? It's 5 Petro Hubs. So there's ethane crackers, a storage hub, and so the PTTG is what it's called. And there's they're calling it a 6-pack of pipelines that's going to be going through the tri-state area, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio. I don't know all these statistics. Right now, the ethane cracker in Belmont County, Ohio, it's a 900-acre facility, 2 permits to run it, 1 air permit and 1 NPDES permit, both already granted by the Ohio EPA. So there's some lawsuits going on with multiple organizations regarding that air quality permit, because we don't think there's a lot of due diligence in it. You look at the plastic industry, their new tagline, which they are toting, is they want to turn the Ohio Rust Belt into the plastic belt.
Oh, good.
So there's a huge correlation of people who aren't even in Ohio want to come here, frack all of our gases and turn it into plastic. Of course, legislators are going to come in and say, no, you can't ban plastic bags, because that's part of the problem for them, because they want to use it all. So this House Bill 242, when we worked on it last year, there was a lot of things, like people get really passionate about, it's my God-given right to use a plastic bag. you know, they get really upset of like, what am I gonna do with my dog poop? That is literally the #1 question that I get from people. And I want to say, what are you going to do about your local rights? I mean, you're okay. You're not okay with dog poop. You are okay with your local rights being taken away. And so that's kind of the mind trick that they're counting on to have happen around this type of conversation. So we're just kind of here to really connect these dots for everybody of why all this is going on in Ohio. I will say that I believe the air permit in 1 year, that one air permit would emit the same amount of pollution the city of Chicago does. I think that's wow. So it's an incredible amount. Yeah, and they're gonna. I mean, it's like I think that something like 1 million gallons of water is going to be pulled from the Ohio River because what they need to do is they need to put it down into that storage hub. The underground storage hub, and then when it's taken back up, my colleague explains it really well. There's a lot of sucking of things out and pushing water out, and things moving around. But, so now we have air permits, you know, we have water, huge amounts of water discharge from the Ohio River, which we already know is like, what, the 3rd dirtiest river in the U.S.?
Is this in addition to the pipelines that are also going to, Canada and
the Falcon,
no,
the North Dakota access, Keystone.
I think
Yeah, these are all
It's
new
not,
ones.
there's the,
what's
the Rover.
The
yeah,
Rover.
the Rover and the
There's
other
another one.
Yeah,
The Falcon.
Nexus.
Nexus.
The Nexus.
But these aren't pipelines. These are what you're talking about is a processing.
So there would be
plant?
6 new pipelines, and then there would be 5 new petrochemical hubs within 3 states: West Virginia, Ohio, right where the
And those hubs are what to supply.
So one of them is like a
areas?
storage area,
Okay.
so an underground storage.
Yeah,
Another one is an
underground.
actual ethane cracker.
Okay.
That's the one that has the PTTG that has been approved
And that's the one that makes.
in
the
Belmont.
plastic.
Mhm.
Okay.
What is the cracker part? I don't
So-
understand that.
so-
I've never heard it.
So, okay, do you know any of this?
A little bit, but I mean, generally speaking, a cracker would be something that takes the raw or the components of gas and petroleum, if that's what you're using, and breaks down into constituents that can be reassembled into the plastic. So it's a chemical process.
So it's bringing in the petroleum products to be.
It's a
turned-
byproduct of
to be
the
turned
petroleum.
into- to be
Yeah,
turned
it's a
into
byproduct
plastic.
that's
Right.
also used to make.
Okay.
So that Utica shale that we have here that they're doing, I guess it's made out of wet gas, which I guess is wet gas is like the perfect thing to make these plastic nurdles that they're called plastic pellets.
Okay.
And the ethane, somehow they take this gas, the ethane, and they use the cracker, like she said, these pellets are a byproduct of, you know, using this gas for, you know, to continue the non-renewable, you know, energy of Ohio. And so then, of course, they want to make money off of this byproduct. Sorry.
I'm gonna say, you have one more take-home message slide you want to show us?
So this is, I think this is my last slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are right now. It's been in the house. It was introduced 2 weeks ago. It had its first committee hearing last Wednesday. No, this Wednesday. 3 days ago Wednesday. So it's still really early in the process right now. We have a blog post on it on our website. We're going to be getting like petitions together and doing the normal things: LTEs, letters, phone calls, action alerts, and then we also really want to encourage people to refuse. Like that's a big part of it, is saying no to certain plastics. Also in July is Plastic Free Month, so we'll have a pledge at SierraClubOhio.com. You can pledge to go plastic free, and then every week we send you tips on how to help yourself with plastic free. Yeah.
Since
I don't know if you were aware of this, but Kroger is getting rid of their plastic bags.
Yeah, the
whole
CEO there
chain.
wrote a really nice LTE saying that, you know, the future of the plastic bag is over. It's coming to an end. You know, so
And,
there is.
I think that
and,
it's supposed to be within the next couple of years, I think.
yeah, I think it's like 2023. It's like it's a little too far off in my opinion. But I think businesses getting involved in this is totally key.
Okay, last comment.
I'd just like to throw something out about, it's tied into all the fracking that's going on in the various shale deposits, Ohio, eastern Ohio, Pennsylvania, is that the industry is desperate for places to have these injection wells, which is their so-called their produced water, which is just a toxic soup. So what they'll do, there's probably thousands of so-called orphan wells just in the state of Ohio, and you can find these on Ohio's government websites, but they will go to any orphan well they can find and try and get access to it and the necessary permits to leave behind this toxic soup. So I know in western Ohio, just north of Oxford, 2 counties north, there's a whole proliferation of these orphan wells. There's a whole coalition to prevent them from the industry from coming and using this concentrated pocket of orphan wells to bring in all these toxins. So it's a below the radar kind of thing. I just wanted to share that with everybody.
They're keeping it quiet, and they'll turn. We have hundreds of thousands of wells that they can turn into injection wells, and we gotta fight that the rest of our life and for our grandchildren.
Great. Well, can we all thank Alyssa? And also a round of applause for Bill Heck and Marnie.
And could I ask that anybody who can